Hey everyone, welcome back. We're doing a deep dive today on some interesting ideas from Shaman John Rasmussen.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Have you heard of him?
I have,
Yeah.
yeah.
So he has this YouTube video and there's a blog post kind of summarizing it, and they're both called Courage vs. Trust.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. And it's really interesting stuff. Basically, he's saying instead of, looking for certainty and relying on trust,
Mm.
we should be cultivating courage. So what do you think about that?
Wow, that's a really different way to look at things, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
usually we think of trust as the foundation, especially in relationships and stuff.
For sure.
But he's saying that expecting like 100% trust can actually hold us back.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued.
Yeah.
So tell me more about that. Why does he see trust as a limiting thing?
Well, he basically starts by saying that the world is like inherently unpredictable.
Okay.
He uses this analogy of driving, which I thought was really interesting.
Okay.
Like, you might trust other drivers to, follow the rules, but accidents still happen, right? Life is just full of surprises, and there's no amount of trust that can, like, completely shield us from that, you know?
That's right. So it's like instead of trying to find these guarantees that might not even exist,
Right.
he's saying focus on something that we can actually control, which is our own courage.
Exactly. And the really interesting thing is that he defines courage not as, like, the absence of fear, but the ability to act even though we're afraid.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he even tells this crazy story about, like, encountering a jaguar in the Amazon rainforest.
Oh my gosh.
Can you imagine?
I can't even that. Just thinking about that freaks me out.
Right.
What did he do?
So, of course, he was terrified. I mean, who wouldn't be?
Yeah.
But instead of running away, he, like, stayed present, and he even took a few steps toward the jaguar.
Wow. Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah, I'm not saying we should all go, like, find jaguars to confront or anything.
Right.
But the point is that courage is about showing up even when you're, like, really, really scared.
Yeah. That's a powerful example for sure. And it makes me think, like, if we can face our fears in one area of life,
Mm-hmm.
like in his case with the jaguar, maybe that can actually give us courage in other areas too.
Yeah, totally.
Like maybe speaking up at work or
Yeah.
finally like starting that creative project we've been putting off.
Exactly, because courage is like a muscle, right? The more
Yeah.
you use it, the stronger it gets.
Yeah.
And that strength can, like, spill over into other parts of our lives, I think.
So how does this whole idea of courage over trust play out in relationships?
Okay.
Because that's where we usually think of trust as being like the most important thing.
Right. Right. It's tricky.
Yeah.
Because we do want that safety and predictability with people we're close to, you know?
Yeah, we want to feel like we can trust them.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But Rasmussen's saying that sometimes needing to trust someone completely can actually backfire.
Really? How so?
Well, think about it. If we feel like we have to trust someone, like 100%, we might not be completely honest with them about our own, like, flaws or mistakes or, things we're struggling with because we're afraid of being judged or rejected.
Right.
And that fear can actually, like, damage the relationship.
That makes sense. So instead of expecting like blind trust, maybe we should focus on creating an environment where it's okay to be honest and vulnerable.
Exactly. Rasmussen talks about building a safe space where people feel comfortable sharing their truth, even if it's messy or imperfect.
Right.
And that takes courage from everyone involved,
Yeah.
the courage to be vulnerable, the courage to listen without judging, and the courage to forgive.
Wow. This is making me rethink my own relationships for
Mhm.
sure. Instead of thinking of trust as something that's just given or earned,
Uh-huh.
maybe it's something that we're always kind of creating together
Yeah.
through courage and vulnerability.
I love that. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. And this leads to another really interesting part of this work, which is this concept of being a powerful creator of your own experiences.
Yeah.
I found that really intriguing, but I wasn't totally sure what he meant by it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's connected to what we've been talking about with courage.
Okay.
Instead of feeling like we're just victims of circumstance, at the mercy of fate or other people,
Yeah.
he's suggesting that we actually have a lot more power than we realize to shape our own lives.
So instead of just reacting to whatever happens,
Yeah.
we can actually choose how we respond, even when things are tough or uncertain.
Exactly. And that's where courage comes in.
Okay.
By choosing courage, we step out of that victim mentality and we start to see ourselves as active participants in creating our own lives.
And that's where that co-creation idea comes back, right?
Exactly.
It's not just about co-creating trust in our relationships, but also co-creating our own reality through the choices we make.
Exactly. And the choices we make when we're being courageous,
Right.
And what I find really powerful about this concept is that it gives us hope even when the world feels chaotic.
Yeah.
Because it reminds us that we're not powerless.
right? We have the power to choose courage, face our fears, and actually create our own experience.
Exactly. And that's a really empowering message for everyone, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about recognizing that we're not just watching the story of our lives. We're actually writing it. And
Yes.
with courage as our pen,
Even
you
again.
know, we can write a story that has purpose and meaning and even joy,
Yeah.
even with all the challenges that come up.
Beautifully said. Yeah.
But how do we actually cultivate that kind of courage?
Right.
Especially when we're afraid. How do we stop fear from holding us back from going after our dreams and taking risks and being our true selves?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't think there's one right answer for everyone.
Right.
But I think Rasmussen's story about the jaguar gives us some clues, you know?
Yeah, you mean the fact that he didn't run away even though he was terrified?
Exactly. He chose to just be present with that fear, to acknowledge it without letting it control him.
So it's not about pretending we're not afraid
No.
or trying to force ourselves to be like fearless.
Right. It's about acknowledging the fear and choosing to act anyway.
And that's where practice comes in, right?
Exactly.
The more we choose courage over fear, the easier it gets.
It's like building any muscle you have to keep using it to make it stronger.
I'm thinking about all the times I've held myself back because of fear, fear of failing or being judged or just the unknown.
Yeah.
And I wonder if, like Rasmussen says, those fears are often based on stories we tell ourselves, stories that might not even be true.
I think that's a really important point because sometimes those stories, those limiting beliefs are the biggest things we need to overcome.
Yeah.
And that takes courage, too.
Right.
The courage to question those stories, to challenge them, and to step outside of our comfort zone.
It sounds like cultivating courage is like a lifelong journey,
I think so.
not just a destination.
Yeah.
There are going to be times when we stumble, when fear wins.
Yeah.
But what matters is that we keep getting back up, keep choosing courage, and keep practicing.
Absolutely. And remember, courage isn't about being perfect.
Yeah.
It's about showing up even when things are uncertain or difficult, you know?
Yeah.
It's about choosing to act even when we're afraid, and it's about trusting ourselves to figure things out as we go.
Wow. I'm feeling really inspired by this conversation already.
That's great.
It's giving me a whole new perspective on how to approach life's challenges instead of getting stuck in that trap of, looking for guarantees or expecting things to always go my way.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see the power of, embracing the uncertainty and choosing courage.
That's fantastic. And that's what this deep dive is all about.
Yeah.
Empowering you to live a more courageous and fulfilling life, even with all the ups and downs.
And speaking of ups and downs,
Yeah.
I'm curious to explore how this idea of courage over trust might apply to, specific challenges we face in our daily lives.
Yeah.
What do you say we dive into some real-world examples in the next part of our deep dive?
I'm all for it. Let's get practical.
Yeah.
So let's think about where could you use a little more courage in your own life? It could be in your career, your relationships, your creative pursuits, personal growth.
Yeah.
What are those areas where you feel like fear might be holding you back?
This whole conversation is making me think about how much I play it safe sometimes.
Huh.
I've always had this dream of writing a novel,
Oh, wow.
but I keep putting it off because I'm just scared,
Yeah. What are you scared of?
Scared of failing, scared of people criticizing it,
Yeah.
the usual stuff.
Yeah.
I bet Rasmussen would say, I'm letting fear block my powerful creator potential or something like that.
He probably would say that. And it's a great example of how fear keeps us stuck.
Yeah.
We get paralyzed by thinking about all the things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
But what if you shifted your perspective a little bit?
Hmm.
What if instead of focusing on the negative, what if you asked yourself, what if I actually succeed?
Mm.
What if I write this amazing novel that touches people's lives?
That's funny. I've never really let myself dream that big.
Yeah, what if?
Yeah, what if-
That's what choosing courage does, right?
Yeah.
It opens up all these possibilities that we might not have even considered before.
It's like instead of focusing on what we might lose,
Right.
we start to see what we might gain.
Exactly. And it brings us back to that idea of co-creation.
Okay.
By choosing to act despite the fear, by actually sitting down and writing,
Yeah.
you're taking an active role in shaping your reality.
Instead of just hoping and wishing for things to happen.
Exactly. You become the driver of your own creative journey.
I love that. And who knows, maybe by facing my own fear of writing, I could inspire someone else to do the same.
Totally. That's the ripple effect of courage.
Yeah.
Has the power to lift other people up too.
And that makes me think about relationships too.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier about how needing to trust someone completely can sometimes be a problem.
Right.
So how does courage help us build like healthier, more authentic relationships?
Well, it starts with the courage to be vulnerable,
Okay.
to show up as our true selves, even the messy parts, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Rasmussen talks about creating that safe space where people feel comfortable sharing their truth without being judged.
Yeah.
And that takes courage from both people.
Right.
It takes courage to be the one who's vulnerable, and it takes courage to be the one who's holding space for someone else's vulnerability.
So it's not about expecting our friends or partners to always have it all together.
Right.
It's about offering compassion and understanding even when they mess up.
Exactly. We're all human. We all make mistakes.
Yeah, for sure.
But when we choose courage over judgment, when we offer grace and understanding,
Mm-hmm.
that's how we build trust, you know?
Yeah.
Real trust that's based on acceptance, not fear.
You know, I'm realizing that courage in relationships also means setting boundaries.
Yes.
Because sometimes the most courageous thing we can do is say no.
Absolutely. Courage isn't just about saying yes to everything.
Right.
It's about figuring out what really matters to us and then having the guts to stand up for ourselves.
Even when it's hard.
Even when it's hard, exactly. So, do you have any practical advice for our listeners on how to cultivate more courage in their daily lives?
Well, one thing that stuck with me from Rasmussen's work is the idea of starting small.
Okay.
You don't have to make some huge, drastic change right away.
Right.
Baby steps are okay.
Like instead of trying to write a whole novel all at once,
Exactly.
I could just commit to writing for like 30 minutes every day.
There you go. Or maybe you're terrified of public speaking.
Yeah.
Instead of signing up for a TED Talk,
Right.
start by sharing your ideas with a small group.
Yeah.
Remember, courage is built through practice.
Mhm.
And those small acts of bravery can add up to something big over time.
It's like that saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Exactly. And that first step is often the hardest, but once you take it, you start to build momentum.
And the more we experience the benefits of choosing courage,
Uh-huh.
the more likely we are to keep choosing it.
Absolutely.
This makes me wonder, though, how do we know the difference between courage and just being reckless?
That's a good question.
Yeah, because sometimes we might think we're being brave when we're really just being impulsive.
Right. I think the key difference is intention and awareness.
Okay.
Recklessness is often about trying to escape something or avoid something,
Yeah.
while true courage comes from a conscious choice to act in alignment with our values,
Even if we're afraid.
even if we're afraid. Exactly.
So maybe we need to ask ourselves, what's motivating this action?
Yeah,
Is it coming from a place of fear or from a place of purpose?
exactly. And it's also important to think about the potential consequences of our actions, you know?
Yeah.
Courage doesn't mean throwing caution to the wind and ignoring risks.
Right.
It's about weighing those risks, making informed choices, and then acting with intention.
So it's not about being fearless.
Right.
It's about being mindful and intentional.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important piece of this whole courage thing.
What's that?
Self-compassion.
Okay.
Because, let's be honest, we're all going to stumble sometimes. We're going to let fear get the best of us, and we're going to make choices we regret.
So how do we deal with those moments when we're feeling like we messed up?
That's where self-compassion comes in.
Okay.
Instead of beating ourselves up for our mistakes,
Uh-huh.
we can practice offering ourselves the same kindness we would offer a friend.
So instead of saying, I can't believe I did that, I'm so stupid,
Right.
we can say, hey, it's okay. Everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah.
What can I learn from this, and how can I move forward with more courage and wisdom?
Exactly. Remember, courage isn't about being perfect.
Yeah.
It's about showing up even when we're imperfect.
Right.
It's about choosing to act even when we're afraid. And it's about trusting ourselves to figure things out as we go.
It sounds like cultivating courage is really an ongoing process.
I think so.
It's about learning to trust ourselves,
Yeah.
embrace our imperfections, and just keep moving forward.
Beautifully said. And you know what's really cool is that when we cultivate courage in our own lives,
Uh-huh.
we inspire other people to do the same.
Yeah, because courage is contagious,
Yeah.
right?
Totally. When we see someone else being brave, it gives us permission to be brave too.
So by choosing courage, we're not just changing our own lives.
Right.
We're actually helping to create a more courageous and compassionate world.
That's a powerful thought, isn't it? And ultimately, that's what this deep dive is all about.
Yeah.
Empowering you to live a more courageous and fulfilling life, even with all the ups and downs.
And in doing so, we might just inspire someone else to find their own courage along the way.
Exactly.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Okay.
I'd love to hear from you, our listener. What resonated with you most from this conversation?
Yeah.
And what's one small act of courage you can commit to this week? Maybe it's having that tough conversation you've been putting off, or
Yeah.
starting that creative project, or just saying no to something that's not serving you anymore.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, remember, you have the power to choose
Me
courage.
too.
And even the smallest steps could lead to big
Oh,
transformations. And we'll be here to support you every step of the way. It's funny, talking about all this, I keep thinking back to that Jaguar story.
yeah.
It really shows that courage isn't about being like a superhero or something.
Right.
It's about being human, feeling that fear, but choosing to act anyway.
Absolutely. Rasmussen wasn't some kind of fearless warrior, you know? He was scared, just like anyone would be, but he chose to stay present with that fear.
And in that moment of facing his fear, he found this like wellspring of courage inside himself.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
it was always there, just waiting to be unleashed.
It's a great metaphor for the potential that we all have inside.
Yeah.
We all have that capacity for courage, even if it feels hidden sometimes.
So maybe it's not about finding courage, but remembering that we already have it.
Right.
It's about tapping into that inner strength and using it even when it's scary.
Exactly. And the amazing thing is that the more we use that courage muscle,
Yeah,
the stronger it gets.
right. It's like
Yes.
any skill, the more we practice, the better we get at it.
Exactly. So even if we're starting from a place of fear or self-doubt, we can still build our courage through action.
Just taking those small steps and expanding our comfort zone little by little.
And remember, it's okay to mess up along the way.
Yeah.
Courage isn't about being perfect. It's about getting back up when we fall and keeping going.
This makes me think about all the times I've talked myself out of doing something because I was afraid of failing.
Yeah.
But what if failing is actually a good thing?
Mm.
What if it's just part of the process?
What do you mean?
Like, what if those setbacks are actually opportunities to learn and grow?
That's a great way to look at it because there's really no such thing as failure.
Right.
Just feedback.
And that feedback can be really valuable.
Yeah, if we're open to it.
It's like that saying, you either win or you learn.
I like that.
And sometimes the lessons we learn from those so-called failures are the most important ones.
I think you're right. And you know what I find really inspiring about all this?
What's that?
It reminds us that we're not alone in this,
Yeah.
we all face fear. We all have doubts.
For sure.
But when we choose courage, we can support each other and inspire each other.
Yeah.
And create a world where there's more compassion and more courage.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the ideas of Shaman John Rasmussen,
Yeah.
what's the main takeaway we want to leave our listeners with?
I think the main thing is this. In a world that's full of uncertainty and change, courage is essential. It's
Yeah.
not just a nice to have. It's the key to reaching our full potential, to building great relationships, and to living a life that truly matters.
And remember, you don't have to be fearless to be courageous.
Right.
You just have to be willing to take that first step. Face your fear and choose to act even when it feels scary.
Because the most amazing things in life are often waiting for us on the other side of our fears.
And the only way to get there is to have the courage to step into the unknown.
So true.
So go out there and be courageous, embrace the uncertainty, face your fears, and trust yourself to handle whatever comes your way.
You got this.
You are capable of more than you know, and the world needs your courage, now more than ever. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep choosing courage.